The first thing I want to mention is that like you really like astutely pointed out that we've seen like revolutions in our distribution of information before, like starting with the Gutenberg press. You can even go the whole way back to the first, when we first invented writing things down and Plato didn't like
Yeah,
it.
yeah.
Um, and then so then we had radio and television, and like for me the most interesting thing is that like for all these other modes of communication, that we established a regulatory body. We decided what the parameters of what we considered was allowed. Like for example with TV we had the watershed, or more crucially actually I think that we just decided in Britain, for example, a while ago, I don't know, I think it was in the 80s, that just like political advertising on TV was just not allowed. We just weren't going to say that was allowed because we thought that, I believe the theory was that politics should be on the doorstep and you shouldn't be able to campaign from behind a TV camera, or in our case now behind a laptop. And like one of the things that I actually like make the case for in my book is that we should just ban political advertising online. I think we should just completely stop it, because like if we thought that advertising on television was sort of a step too far, then what the fuck are we doing letting people micro target adverts? And the craziest thing for me is that like I started writing my book because I saw all these problems in the British political system, that were like really beautifully highlighted by the Brexit vote. Like it was a really great like case study for a lot of the issues that we have. And it has been almost 5 years since the start of the campaign, like in earnest, to leave the European Union, and we're still sat here having done nothing about it. Like nothing. Like they had that DCMS committee on like social media, Facebook, Russian interference, all of the different sort of threads of it. And then they proceeded to do fucking nothing, like absolutely nothing. Like that's terrifying. Like we've realized that there's this huge problem, like with the way like social media can be manipulated. Like as you mentioned, like there's quite a lot of studies that have shown that Facebook can guess with like pretty terrifying accuracy like where your personality sits on the you can get like there's what's it, the ocean graph.
Myers-Briggs.
Yeah,
Yeah, or Myers-Briggs, yeah.
yeah. And like they can assess with pretty accurately that like where you sit on those particular scales. They can there's a couple of studies done, and the names of them escape me, but like on there was the runoff election. I think it was in, oh my goodness, it was with Roy
Is it
Moore
the one
in America, with Roy Moore, the guy
Oh, right, yeah.
Trump was behind. Anyway, so they did these guys did like a whole bunch of studies on that, and they showed that like they believed that they could like they could like depress the turnout of Republicans, or like change the potential voting of like sort of independents who were leaning Republican, or increase the turnout of Democrats, just based on the media diet that they were showing people in adverts. And like even by a couple of percentage points, like if that's accurate, like we need to do something about that. like
Yeah, definitely. But there's was it Alabama?
that's it, Alabama.
Yeah, no, definitely. And look, look, there's also a liberal bias to these platforms. Like you can't look past that. Like, and admittedly, it's been a pretty extreme example of it in America, because the figurehead of the Republican Party and sort of the right wing politics of the country, literally, it's like whether something's truth, whether something is true or a lie, it's like it's apples and oranges. He's just like he doesn't distinguish between the two, and that's a really difficult thing to moderate, mediate. How do you go about regulating or controlling that? Like, I'm not pretending I have like answers to those questions, but there is a liberal bias. Like the people in Silicon Valley, again, being in America and like being around these kind of people, particularly in New York, you know, that they are like, especially by UK standards, they're like super left wing. Like, you know, the sort of their adoption of, you know, sort of, so they would call it sort of social justice, being progressive, which I think in the UK is more intersectionality and sort of intersectional identity politics or whatever. Like it's really strong over there. Like it's a real phenomenon, and it's not just. I think we need to be careful of being like, okay, like these platforms have a responsibility to sort of, you know, moderate the like lunacy that was coming out of the Trump White House and the Republican Party at the time, and then the enablers that have followed, you know, like Ted Cruz and Josh Hawley, and the way that they've sort of pandered to these ideas. But like these platforms, like they're not neutral. They're not objective. They have their own biases. There's some really good stuff actually on AI, how basically like even if you can create sort of a deep learning algorithmic thing that'll inform itself and adapt and shape and, you know, self-teach and eventually get to that sort of state of higher learning, there's a pretty compelling, you know, field of study that demonstrates that like even like the biases of the people who produce the original code will inform the AI. Like if you don't have you know enough women involved in the conception of the original code, if you don't have enough you know, ethnic minorities, people of different political persuasions, then the sort of the implicit human bias, the subconscious that you can't, like, you know, you don't know you're doing it, but in everything you do, the way you think about the world informs how you interact with it. And even if you think you're doing your absolute optimum best to code, you know, totally objectively, to create this sort of, you know, perfectly neutral, chaotically neutral AI, your biases are still going to be present in your work, and it could potentially inform the AI. And the same thing holds true in terms of these tech platforms. You know, the biases of the people that work there, and there is an orthodoxy. You know, it is left wing, it's liberal at these places. You know, you sort of see that in the sort of the name, is it James Damore, the guy at Google, with that memo he sent around?
Yeah, and then he got fired, and then about a month later, the Google CEO said, or the CEO of YouTube literally said what he wrote in his memo. Yeah, like that was the James Damore story was insane. I felt so bad for the guy. Like I really did. Like he wasn't trying to like bring attention. He wasn't trying to be controversial. Like I think someone said, I can't remember who it was, but they were like, look, he's an engineer, and they asked him for feedback. So he went away, he looked at some stuff, and he created the feedback. Like they weren't actually looking for feedback, but he went away and he put together some stuff and went, hey, you know, maybe this is how like men and women might be like slightly different in the way their minds operate. And like, here's some cool ideas about how we might get more women into tech. And then, yeah, got vilified as a horrendous sexist. So I kind of felt bad for the guy. But I mean, there's a great line in that new song, Fake Woke by Tom McDonald. And it said, censorship's a problem because they choose what they erase. And I think that really speaks to like what you're talking about, because, you know, if they were to come up with guidelines that like assessed like what content was all right, and then they applied it equally across the board, then I don't think we'd be having the same problem as we are now, where like it seems like sort of very arbitrary what they decide is okay and what isn't. Like you know, they can take Trump off Twitter for inciting violence or inciting the riot, and yet there's like murderous dictators that still have a Twitter account, and you just kind of go, well, I mean, I get why you removed Trump, but like then why is like X, Y, and Z all still allowed on your platform? It's
there's a correlation here as well to the Wall Street Bets Reddit stuff, because there's this you know, that some of the apps that suspended trading on Robinhood, you know, you could still buy, you know, shares in arms manufacturers that, you know, create the bombs that are dropped on Yemen. You know what I mean? It's like, you always have to have a degree of skepticism about the motivations behind stuff, and if the ethics of it are real, or if there's sort of naked pragmatism about it. And I think oftentimes because of the nature of human beings, it's often actually the latter.
I mean, I feel slightly proud. Like I started putting this stuff on YouTube like a couple of months ago, and then I just had my first video removed for talking about something. I'm not going to mention it so that this doesn't get removed. But I was talking about something. No, I'm a little concerned because my book's coming out, and I don't want to say the wrong thing, because if I get flagged again, then I can't post for a while. But I got it removed for it. They didn't tell me exactly, but it seems that it was something that I had referenced that was literally in about 5 or 6 different major publications. And I was complaining because like a video about a similar thing had also been removed on YouTube. And I was like, hang on, how can you do this? Like it's in like major publications. Like why can you say that this is not okay? And it wasn't anything that I feel like was like majorly controversial. But yeah, it's confusing sometimes, because I think it's the lack of accountability that terrifies me, and it's the same as like those like a lot of apps actually suspended trading on GameStop, on AMC, on BlackBerry, and Nokia, all just those 4, and yet like there's no recourse. Like for you know, there's no way to like voice your grievance and have someone address it. Like at least like people can say, oh, you know, we don't want the government controlling this sort of thing. And you go, well, okay, right, fair enough. I understand your fear of like government tyranny. But like the point is that we have the recourse to like get rid of them and change it. Like if we vote them out, like that's like, it might not be a perfect system. It's definitely not at the minute, but like at least we have that option. Like, I mean, I think what Trump showed actually was that, and what Jeremy Corbyn almost showed, and what Brexit showed, was that like if people are legit like that angry at the system, they have a way to change it. Like you might not like the fact that we left Europe. I really hated it at the time. I'm not sure how I feel about it now, watching the EU be so childish about the vaccines. But like there is at least like a recourse. Like that's why people created like the democratic systems that we have now, is because you could at least do something about it. Like when Facebook or YouTube or Twitter or Robinhood or anyone like stops you doing something that you believe you should be able to do, like, okay, yeah, you can leave their platform, but like not everyone's going to do it. You don't have any vote. You don't have any say in it, really. And aside from like voting with your feet, as the free marketeers like to say, like you don't really have like some way to get justice. And yeah, I think that's the we're really going to probably have to have some sort of conversation about like how we classify these big platforms. Like you said, like they're not a platform, they're not a publisher, and we probably need to figure out where we stand on them. Thanks so much for listening. If you haven't already and you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe to this podcast and to our mailing list. And don't forget, my book, Brexit, The Establishment Civil War, is now available for pre-order on Amazon. You'll find the link in the description below. Until next time, thanks so much for listening.